This is SPY on the 5-minute time frame. I'm going to go over price targets for Thursday. We ended the day at $422.66, up just over 1%. The day's low, $418.65. The day's high, $423.50. This is where we ended. To the north side from where we are takes us to 2 standard deviations at 424.17. Above that, at 3 standard deviations and another possible take profit area, 425.48 and 426.76. To the south side, back at the middle of the trend, and that takes us to 421.60. Another level of support, 419.04, 417.72, and another possible level of support and buy-in area, 416.47. Note the sell-off here at resistance, and then what happens? It goes down. This line then turns into support. Price fell through, started to go sideways, back up to resistance. If we are down here, this now turns back into resistance. And then what happened? It fell apart, went up again, sideways, broke through, and then back down, and then past resistance on the way to the upside. Could not make it to this line, which again is resistance. If we are down here, this is support. This turns into resistance, and then we start to fall. Looking left, there's a gap to the downside that starts at roughly 413.59 and closes out at roughly 410.92. So watch out for that. We are not in that channel just yet, but if this turns south on us, we could get there. Now, there was also a gap that I have been tracking since the 25th. And check this out. It opened up at 421.89, closes out at 423.51 roughly. I'm going to extend this out and look at that. We just touched it right there. 423.50, 51, close enough, right? So that gap is no longer in play. Oh, let me remove my magnet. All right, this is gone. So that, as I mentioned, is done. And if you take this, let's say to the 1 hour or the daily time frame, check out the bigger picture. But the problem is I've marked this out so many times, it's hard for me to even see, but we are right here. And to the middle of the trend on the daily time frame would take us to roughly 446.71, and below that, back at -2 standard deviations, is 419.27. There are other gaps to be aware of, and actually you cannot see here, so let me take this to the 15-minute time frame. I've already marked out this gap. I'll just extend it out. We are not in that zone, just something to be aware of and the potential to hit. It's not going to go up like an elevator. I'm going to have to go back and remark that one. But this one will close out at 438.45. Ignore all these other horizontal lines. All right, let's move on to the triple Qs. We are at resistance and a possible take profit area. me change this out. Oops. Try that again. If you don't know how to change the coordinates, 56.96. All right, we ended the day up nearly 2%. And the low for the day, 351.62. The high, 357.53. We are nearing 3 standard deviations. And what happens at resistance? People take their profits and they run. So I anticipate maybe going up and then back down again and grinding along here to break to support. This line then turns into support, or we could go to the upside. Just make sure you check your MACD, the RSI, and any other indicator that you like. So to the north side takes us to roughly 358.07 and 362.17. To the south side, this gap has not closed. It's tiny. So if we go and get to the middle of the trend, this would be wiped out. But that would take us to roughly 351.11. And there's another one right here. I will extend out. That ends at roughly 345.56. And this one ends at 343.98. But let me give you these other levels here. At 2 standard deviations takes us to 353.88. The middle of the trend takes us to 345.25. 336.77. If we go down from here, this I would anticipate, if we make it to this line, a bounce, and that would be at roughly 332.70 and 328.44. And if we are down here and we go up, this then turns into resistance. If we are here and we continue to climb up from there, this turns into resistance, resistance, and resistance. All possible take profit areas as well if you're just getting in and out very quickly. And I like to play, well, if you're trying to play conservatively, -2 and 2 standard deviations. Within this range, price tends to stay. Anywhere outside is an outlier, and you better make some moves quickly, because if it's down here, it will eventually bounce. If it's up here, it will eventually fall, and it might fall to consolidate and then go back up again, but you'll have to pay attention to the charts for that. This gap that I marked out for myself is very close to getting closed. I anticipate this will close on Thursday and then go down and then possibly hit the next leg up. And that would take us to 358.97. And I like to change that out, to green, because that's a gap up. This is why it takes me forever to mark everything out. So it's tedious because I like to color code it too. And taking a look. Oh, that is the 15-minute time frame I've been giving you. So make sure that you check that on the 15. I need to switch it back to the 5 because I like to give it on the 5. But because I'm here on the 15-minute time frame, this gap has not closed out. At 368.27, and this one, just a small one, nonetheless, it's still a gap, and that would take us to roughly 377.17. Now let me go back to the 5-minute time frame, because the different time frames give you different buy and sell signals. So let's do this again on the 5-minute time frame. All right. I'll extend that. We are basically at 2 standard deviations. 3 standard deviations and another level of resistance takes us to 358.67. That gap closes out at 358.91, and at 4 standard deviations, 360.06 to the south side. Back to the middle of the trend and the baseline where price grinds either along the channels or sideways this way before making a move to the upside or the downside. This is basically its resting place right here at 354.45. -2 standard deviations is roughly 351.60. That gap closes to the south side at roughly 351.15. -3 standard deviations is roughly 350.18 and 348.81. The RSI is already starting to curl down, and we are at resistance here too. So at some point, I will anticipate this to make its way all the way back down to 30 and then a bounce back up, and the cycle repeats itself. Now I'm going to go over Apple. I'm going to try to make this quick now since I've spent so much time. All right, we ended the day at 173.97, up nearly 2%. The day's low, 170.12. The high, 174.23. This is where we are at 2 standard deviations and resistance, so I will anticipate a bit of a sell-off as people take their profits and they run for another possible leg up after some consolidation and possibly basing. But if we make it to the next level, that would roughly take us to 174.79, 175.54, and back to the middle of the trend and the base, 172.51, 170.95, 170.19, and 169.41. Now, looking left, when I last talked about this on the 31st, we were here, bounced up to resistance and the middle of the trend. So when we come from down here, this is support, this turns into resistance, grinding it out, tried to go up, and we touched this gap that I have pointed out previously, and I'm going to extend it, and you can see that it touched right about here or here, and this gap has closed out at 173.28 roughly. So I will remove this. Again, this is how I like to chart out what I've done so I can easily see what is happening or has happened there. So we close that out. What is that today? Okay, on the 1st. And this one already closed out at 170. And this gap up here that I've already pointed out previously, I will now extend. Every day you have to extend it out, go back after you've charted it. So this starts at 175.44. We are very close. If we make it to this level, I will anticipate a sell-off as we hit another level of resistance and a take profit area. And then we could be grinding all the way up and all the way down, and then eventually close this out. It could take a very long time to do so. So this is something to be aware of. We are not even close to closing out this gap. And I will move that to over here. And obviously the price changes because I just can't be precise unless I change it out here, and I'm just looking at rough estimates. I don't really care at this point. All right, and then we've got a gap here that closed down at 168.33. This gap to the south side is still in play. Let me take this over to the 15-minute time frame make it a little bigger. And then I will switch it back to the 5-minute. So consider that last one that I did an extra bonus, checking out the 15-minute time frame and the 5-minute. All right, so that gap has not been filled yet, but that would take us down to 164.19. The 1-year price target on Apple is 197.88, a 13% return on your money from where we are. Now let me flip this back before I forget. And anything else going on? Nope, ignore all those lines, the horizontal lines. Again, those are my former support and resistance lines. Now the next one I want to go over is Tesla. All right, we ended at 205.66, up 2.4%. The low 197.85, the high 205.99. Oops, let me change that. 99. All right, to the north side at 3 standard deviations, 209.57, and at 2, 3, and 4 standard deviations, and an outlier, 213.28. Now to the south side, if we are here, this turns into support, where I anticipate a bounce if we make it to this level, 198.48, 191.24, 187.54, and 183.85. This gap that I talked about on the 30th this is where I last talked about Tesla. So we went down from there. And then what happened? We hit support and bounced right back up to resistance. But check this out. I'm going to flip this to the 15 minutes so you can see this better. And what did I say was the gap? 193.25. We hit basically right there, 190.408, and that was on the 31st. Super close, but we have not closed out that gap. I will now extend that gap to the south side. This is still in play, so if we tank, which would make sense that if we are up here at near resistance and then we make our way down back to support, then this gap will close out. And that's, again, the 15 minutes. So let me flip this to the 5-minute. And we are in this channel, in the zone. So again, I know that price will definitely stay within -2 and 2 standard deviations all day long. If it goes out, that's a signal for you to get out, possibly take your profits and run. Okay? Because it's not going to stay there without consolidating back to the base. All right, so on the 5-minute time frame, I'm going to delete this now because it makes my chart look like a hot mess. This is where we are on the 5-minute. 209.63, 213.26. I hope I didn't say this already because I got sidetracked. This is what happens when I mark this out on the fly. All right, back to the middle. So this would also be the beginning of that gap to the south side, 198.49 roughly. That gap closes out at roughly 193.25 roughly, and 191.17, 187.48, 183.85. And this stock will psych you out, and it's a very violent and volatile stock. 1 minute you think you're doing well, and boom, it goes to the south side. And then it goes from the south side and rips to the upside. This gap is still in play at 242.69. It closes out. Opens up at roughly 230.80. And they also changed the price target for Tesla to 241.79. I have previously marked it out here at 335 and 350. See on stock analysis. So always pay attention to that so we know where our target is to get in and to get out if you are just day trading or doing short swing trades. I do own Tesla and I have it as a long-term trade for myself. Back to the 5-minute. Now the next one I want to go over is AMD. This was on fire today, beast mode. Okay, I've marked this out many times for myself, so ignore all the horizontal lines, but I'll walk you right through this. Okay, we ended the day at 108.04, up almost 10%. The day's low, 98.50. The day's high, 108.15. We ran because of earnings right there. All right, here is 2 standard deviations. This is, again, these horizontal lines are former support and resistance lines that I have not removed. And that would take us back to where I previously marked it at 110.0506-ish. All right, 3 standard deviations is 112.49. And another possible take profit area is 115.10 to the south side. 104.90, 99.75, 97.28, and roughly 94.67. If you click that, that gives you the news on the market. All right. This gap has already closed out at 101.56 and this one at 106.37. Flip it to the 1 hour or whatever time frame so you can see the bigger picture. There are other gaps to the upside and to the downside, but I just give you the range that we are in day by day. Now, the last one I'm going to do is, and congratulations if you made money off of AMD. I think Murat is also in this trade, and I am as well. I could have sold out a while ago at roughly 120, and I did not. So the next time we hit that level, I am out because this is not a long-term investment for me. This is just play money and for fun. Now I'm going to flip this over to YUMC, Yum China Holdings. I got in today as a short swing trade for myself. I bought right here, and of course, what happened? The stock went down, as it always does, it seems, whenever I buy in. But we did manage to go up to 44.56. We ended the day down 15%. When I saw this, I'm like, I got to get in. So I was checking it on the 1-minute time frame as well. Again, different time frames give you different buy and sell signals. So it's very important to check. So I bought it, well, this has moved, all right? But I bought it at 43.056. And we are on the, on the 5-minute time frame. I'll flip it back. So right here, a gap formed to the downside. So as I always do when I mark out, I know that it's going to go back up to the upside. When? I don't know. It could take forever. That's something that you just have to roll the dice. And I like to play gaps, and I'm trying to do more of it and just get in and out, in and out. So this gap begins at 45.58. 2 standard deviations, 50.02. This thing closes out at roughly 52.58, 53.06, 55.88. And note this other tiny gap here that needs to be, see, it's so tiny that I can't really extend it without ruining my chart, but I'll go back and clean that up. But there are 2 baby gaps to the north side of that. So I do anticipate this will go up, but it's not going to go up like this all the way. It's going to go up and then go to resistance, and then go back all the way back down to support, and then up to resistance and back down to support. It's going to be a roller coaster ride. So can you stomach it? That's something that I have to decide what I want to do. So I could get out right here, just get in and out, or play it to 2 standard deviations, but eventually I know it's going to close up here. Now to the south side, 38.38, 35.48, and 32.55. The reason we gap down is because of earnings, but I am in this trade for my mom, and we were up 45%, and now we're down again. So the next time, again, it goes up, I'm going to sell it off for her, and I'm going to sell off for me once we get to this gap. I'm not going to stay in it as long as previously as I held it for my mom. And the RSI, look at that. It's up here. It's going to come back down to earth and eventually back here for possibly another ride up to 70. Okay, so pay attention to that. And AMD ran, I forgot to mention. Oh, wait, I did because of good earnings. All right. That does it for me. Thank you so much for watching. And if there is a stock that you would like me to go over, please let me know.